And hello everyone, welcome back to another C++ tutorial. So, this is going to be the fourth time I'm refilming this. For some reason, I cannot become a math teacher. I'm never happy with the work I do. Anyhow, so first off, we can remove everything and just stick with how we are. I'm going to just print out, and let's see here. There we go. So, first we're going to be talking about some basic math operators. If you're not really good at math, you don't have to worry too much about anything in the tutorial. You should still follow along because it will definitely be useful and required for the next parts that comes up. But if you don't really care too much about math, then if you're struggling with something here, you don't have to worry too much. And we're not going to cover difficult topics, we're only going to cover the basics that you basically should know for any programming language, because you might use it at some point to create your application. Okay, so you can also keep all of this inside of a variable. So if I say int x is equal to, and let's say 4 plus or 5 plus 6, which should give us 11, and it's just adding things together by using plus. Then here if we say x, we save and then we compile and run this. Then we get 11 as expected. You can of course also add more here. So 99, for example, plus 8 plus 1. That's also possible. There's nothing wrong with that. As you can see there, 119. Cool, so we have covered that you can now put it inside of variables as well. This just depends on what type it is. Is it going to be an int or a float? Because if you could remember, a float or a double basically has something like this. So that would return a float, not an int. An int would not have these right here because this is considered a float. Even though the rest here are ints, this is still a float, so it's going to want to return a float on the end of the day, as you can see there. Anyhow, so I'm just going to put everything in here just to keep things simple. We also have subtracting, so let's say we have 15 minus 7. Then if we let this work itself out, then as you can see here, we get 8. We can also do something like plus 9 here. That's perfectly fine as well. So you can mix and match all of these math things together. As you can see, 17 now. So yeah, you can mix and match them. We also have times. So this is, normal timing, multiplication. So for example, 5 times 5 should give us 25. As you can see there. But take note, if we say 3 plus 5 times 5, we're not going to get what you think we're going to get. We're going to get 28. The reason for this is because it's not 3 plus 5. That's not first, because this is the order of operations we're talking about. If this was first, it would be 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 8 times 5, which is 40. But in this case, order of operations say multiplication comes first. It's always first, depending on what you do. So it's the same as basically saying this. As we know, brackets should, in any math situation, always be done first. Brackets are most important, which means if it's in brackets, it should be done first. And this is basically what it's saying, that, just without the brackets. If you did, however, want to work this out first, you can do brackets like that. This will make it, say, 3 plus 5 and then times. As you can see now, we get 40 and not 28. So yeah, you can use brackets to change the order of operations. Then we have division. So let's say 10 divided by 5. That should give us about 2. You can see there. And if we say times 2, then what do you think we're going to get? 4. That means that division was done first. In this case, division comes before multiplication. If it was the other way around, it was 5 times 2 first, then this would have been 10. 10 divided by 10 is 1. But it was 4 because 5, or 10 divided by 5 is 2, and 2 times 2 is 4. Yet again, if you want to change the order of operation, you can do that. And this will make that it times first and then divide. Now you might be going, oh no, what's going on? I don't know math. Don't worry, I was the same. So basically how you can figure out which here is first, if you don't want to use brackets, you can use brackets if you want. For example, we can say +9 here, and we can also put brackets here. That's perfectly fine. If you want it, you can even put brackets around this. This is perfectly fine. Brackets are like your best friend. So you can have as many brackets here as you want, and they will do the order of operations for you. But now you might be asking, okay, but how do you know what the default order of operations is? Well, that's where BODMAS comes in. We used to learn this in school. Most of us, like me, just slept on it. So I only know half of it. So I know this is for brackets. So B is brackets. Don't know what O means. Then we have D for division. That is with this forward slash. Take note though, forward slash. Before I forget, division uses a forward slash, not a backward slash. Take that as note. Those two are completely different. Anyhow, and then M is for multiplication or times, A is for adding, and S is for subtracting. So first it would be brackets, then whatever this is, then division, multiplication, add, subtract. So you can just use BODMAS to figure it out. So yeah. We also have one more operator. This is called the modulo operator. It's usually considered one of the more difficult operators to understand as when you start programming, but once you kind of progress into programming, it becomes a lot simpler to understand. It took me about, let's say, 6 months to completely understand modulo. So if you didn't understand it off the bat, it's understandable. It does take a while. If we say 10 modulo 3, we will get 1, and I'll explain why we get 1 in a second, as you can see there. So when we divide, right? So if we go like this and we say 10 divided by 3, right? What basically happens is it's 3 plus 3 plus 3, which is equal to 9, right? And then we can't divide anymore. And then this is 3 times. So what we'll get then is 3 as a return. So if we were to say 10 divided by 3, we will get 3. Of course, it would be a decimal point and not a floating point. Or actually, no, it's not a floating point. But you can see we get 3 because that's how it works. Now what modulo does is it basically finds what's left over. Because as you can see, there's 1 left over here. It's not 10 yet. So what it does, it takes the value we have minus this value here. So then it's minus 9, and that will give us 1, because that's how much is left. So when we say modulo 3, we get 1, because it is 10 minus 9, which gives us 1. We can take another example as well. Let's say 8 modulo 3. You can of course go bigger and say like 89 or something, but you know, that's a lot of math to do. So if we compile and run this, we'll get 2. Because 3 plus 3 is equal to 6. But we cannot add another 3 here because then it would be equal to 9. So there are 2 left. So now we just say 8 minus 6, which is equal to 2. And there we go. That's basically what modulo does for us. So yeah, that's the basics of modulo. It basically gives you the remainder of a division, what the number remainder, not the decimal point remainder. So yeah, those are the basic operators. Next up, we're going to look at some functions. So to use those functions, we could say hashtag include and then cmath, and this will allow us to use a lot of mathy things in our program. Yet again, I'm not going to cover everything here because it's just out of the scope of this video. We are not mathematicians, we're just basic programmers, so we just want to know the basics of programming. So we're just going to cover the basics of numbers here. Now, of course, you can put it inside of a variable again, but I'm going to do it inside of here because I just find it faster and simpler. So first we have pow. This is to the power of, basically. So if I say 5 to the power of 2, we'll get 25. As you can see right there, we get 25. If I say 5 to the power of 3, I think that would be like 121. Yes, 25, I mean, not 21. Where did I get 21? Anyhow, so yeah, 125. And yeah, so that is power. So it's basically saying, in this case, that should be slash 5 times 5 times 5. That's basically what this is saying here. 5 times itself, how many times? Then we have square. Whoa. There's square root. So square root basically gets the square root of something. For example, 30, let's go 36. I think that should be 6, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see here. And yes, it is 6. What is the square root of something, you may ask? Well, it is basically when you times something by itself. So 6 to the power of 2. Or in other words, it is 6 times 6. So we compile and run this. As you can see, we get 36. So yeah, the square root basically just gets what is the root of this entire equation if you were to times it all together. And of course you have 25, which we just covered, would be 5. And there we go. Okay, so next up we have rounding. So usually in school you had to round it yourself and it wasn't very nice, whatnot. But now the computer can do it for us. So what we can do is, let's say we want to round up or down depending on which one is highest. So if you remember from school, you basically have, let's say 5.4, right? Whoa, that's 5. That will round to 5. And then you have 5 times 5, which will round to 6. The reason for this is once it reaches 0.5 or higher, it rounds up. That's how math usually works. You round up then. If it is lower than 0.5, so like 0.1, 2, 3, or 4, then it rounds down to 5. So yeah, that's basics of rounding, for in case you may have forgotten. So we say round here, and let's say we say 5.1. That will of course round down to 5. And if we were to say 5.5, then that will of course round up to 6. As you can see there. Now what if you always wanted to round down? Because let's say you might be getting input from the user and you don't necessarily know what it is, but whatever it is, you always want to round down. Well, to do that, you can just say floor. And now it will always, always, always round down, never up. As you can see here, we get 5. If we make this, let's say 5.1, and let's make another one here and make that 5.9. As you can see, it will always round down back to 5. Now, what if we wanted to do the opposite and you wanted to round up? Then that would be seal. This will always round up, so in this case, it will round to 6. So how do you remember the difference between round, floor, and seal? Well, let's start with floor. The floor is underneath your feet. If you want to look towards the floor, you'll have to look downward. So it's going to round it down because you have to look down to look at the floor. With seal, the ceiling is above you. So you have to look up to see the ceiling. So seal will always round up because that's the ceiling. And a round is of course simple as it rounds. Whichever one is closer is the one it rounds to. Cool. Now 2 more we want to cover. So we have if max and we have if min. Sometimes you want to know which of the 2 numbers are bigger. Of course, you can use something like an if statement, which we will cover in the future, and figure out which one is the biggest and which one is the lowest between 2 numbers. Or you can just use if min and if max. So if we go like this and we say 10 here, if max will give us 10 and if min will give us 5, because 5 is less than 10. And here 5 is more than 10, because if max gives us the maximum in this value. If min will give us the minimum. I do believe we can add more. Let's see if we added 15 here. Nope, you can only add 2. My bad. So you can only add 2 here, but you can test those 2 against each other. Of course, we can also switch this. So let's say this is 0 now instead of 10. And this one is 4 now instead of 10. Now if we were to run this, we'll get 5 and then underneath it's 0. As you can see right there. So yeah, that's all there is I wanted to teach you about math. Math isn't that difficult thanks to how programming makes it easy. So most of the time you don't have to do your own math, you just ask the computer to do it, because a computer is basically just a massive calculator. So yeah, that's the basics of math. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all again in the next Python tutorial.